All right, folks, welcome back for the commercial break. We've been talking all show, Amanda, about the news we broke yesterday regarding Liz Cheney, her husband, and his law firm doing business deals with places like China. Joining us now is the congressional candidate working to put Liz Cheney into an early retirement. Harriet Hageman is here from the great state of Wyoming. Harriet, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
It's great to have you. Listen, I just want to get your reaction. You're running. You've been talking about Liz Cheney being a swamp creature more aligned with Washington and Virginia than the good people of Wyoming. What's your reaction when you hear her husband's law firm was dealing with the very type of regimes that Liz Cheney talks about all the time that she opposes?
Well, it's been interesting to learn more about this as this campaign has progressed. One of the things that we know is that Liz Cheney has rightfully talked about the fact that China is really a pretty important enemy, I guess you will, of the United States in terms of the things that they're doing. We know that for years they have been commandeering and stealing our data, our electronics, so much of our technology. And Liz Cheney has been kind of at the forefront warning about the issues with China. And then we find out that her husband, who is a partner in a law firm in Washington, D.C., is actually profiting from the Chinese government as well as other governments around the country, around the world, such as Kazakhstan and Belarus. The importance of that is that as a partner in that law firm, he's actually an owner of the firm, meaning that while Liz Cheney may be talking about all of the problems and the risks associated with China, her own husband and her own bank account is profiting from what China is doing in our country and abroad.
Yeah, you know, when I think about Liz Cheney and I think about her opportunities and the way that she operates in Washington, D.C., it's important to recognize that despite the January 6th committee and all the news surrounding that, the news that John broke about her husband, it's important to remember that she's supposed to represent the people of Wyoming, and I don't think that she does that very effectively. That's just my humble opinion. What would you do differently if you win Cheney's seat?
Well, for one thing, I would expose the January 6th committee for what it is. We need to be investigating a lot of things, but that one is one of them that I think that they ought to be spending their time and money on. The fact is that I would represent the interests of Wyoming. Right now, we've got an administration that has literally gone to war with some of the most important industries we have, the coal industry, the oil and gas industry, their efforts to shut down the pipelines, their efforts to prevent us from being able to produce and access the natural resources that we have in my beautiful state. And Liz Cheney is not fighting those battles. Just one example is that she's not on the Natural Resource Committee. For one of the first times in Wyoming history, we do not have somebody in Congress on that committee. Yet that's the committee that addresses everything from federal lands to the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation to USDA issues involving the National Forest Service. It's an incredibly important committee, and Liz Cheney is not on it because she's spending what she says is a substantial amount of her time, if not all of her time, on the January 6th Commission work. So that's just one small example. The other one is that Liz Cheney does not come to Wyoming. Right now, you can see I've got this kind of this weird background behind me because I'm sitting in a library in Buffalo, Wyoming. I just left a bull sale over in Worland, Wyoming, where I was with, 75 people talking about some of the issues that are very important to our state: water issues, land use issues, our ability to get our beef and our cattle to market with the supply chain problems that we're having in this country. Liz Cheney is not engaging in the state of Wyoming with anybody in this state. She doesn't visit Wyoming. She doesn't come and talk to us about the issues. She doesn't know what the issues are. Liz Cheney isn't from Wyoming. She's really never been from Wyoming. And she just does not, she's never really furthered the issues that we need to fight for in my state.
Such a good point. Even the New York Times agrees with you. They had a headline this morning saying Liz Cheney isn't hanging out with Wyoming Republicans anymore. Even they agree with you. I want to ask you about some recent developments. The Wyoming GOP has censured Cheney. The Republican National Committee has censured Cheney. And the party has done a straw poll in Wyoming, and you won, not by a little margin, you won 59-6 among party activists in the straw poll. What is the dynamic going on there that has driven down her popularity and separated her from her state?
Well, there are many things, including the fact that she's spending all of her time working on a commission that we all recognize as illegitimate from the beginning to end, the way that it was put together. But the other thing that is important about that committee is that literally this committee is acting as the prosecutor, the judge, and jury related to all issues associated with January 6th. That isn't the way that our government works in this country. We have separation of powers. So the people in Wyoming recognize that she's working on an illegitimate committee with Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff, and Adam Kinzinger, as well as Jamie Raskin and other pretty radical Democrats. She's doing it, and in the process, she's deflecting from the failures of the Biden administration, the things that we've already talked about, inflation, the crisis at the border, the fact that we've got fentanyl that's absolutely pouring across the southern border, and the problems and issues associated with that. So I think that all of that is being reflected in what is happening at both at the state and the national level. What's important about the RNC censure is that the RNC is actually listening to the grassroots. It was about a year ago that the counties and then the state party in Wyoming chose to censure Liz Cheney for what she's done, primarily related to the fact that she impeached and voted to impeach President Trump without even the slightest bit of due process, without even the slightest bit of actual legitimate investigation to find out what happened. And while at the same time withholding 14,000 hours of videotape of what took place on January 6th in Washington, D.C. So the county started the process. It went up to the state. The state Central Committee voted to censor Liz Cheney, and the RNC has now voted to censor Liz Cheney. So again, this is a circumstance where the grassroots and its involvement with the RNC actually worked. And I'm very proud of the fact that the RNC listened to the people in Wyoming. Liz Cheney ostensibly represents us. And if we don't feel that she's representing us, and if we don't feel like she's doing her job, then the RNC needs to listen to the folks from Wyoming.
Absolutely. One quick question. We've just got about 30 seconds left. After she was censured by her Republican constituents in Wyoming and then by the GOP, I got to say, she doesn't seem that bothered. And that to me seems like an indicator of how she feels about her voters.
I think that you've absolutely made one of the very best points of the day. That's exactly right. If she doesn't care what she thinks, do you think that she's going to represent us? We only have one representative, and we need to make it count. And when we needed to count on her, she wasn't there for us. She needs to go. She doesn't represent Wyoming. We need to have someone from Wyoming who actually represents us. Anybody who wants to help can go to HagemanForWyoming.com. HagemanForWyoming.com. Learn more about me, and they can help us to defeat Liz Cheney.
Yeah, that's going to be one of the most watched races in August. Harriet Hageman, thank you so much for joining us today.